I'm going to slap this into the beginning of every single video for a little while. So it has come to my attention that a lot of people are watching my content here on the anime channel, and I do appreciate that very much. However, it seems that not a lot of you have subscribed. It is completely free to subscribe, and it does help me out a lot. So it would be very appreciated if any of you that are watching any of my content, including what I see is surprisingly the highest watched content on my channel, don't be ashamed. Just hit the subscribe button and help a brother out. You know, I'm struggling as it is over on the gaming channel, and I wanted to try and bring this new project to people, and it would be much appreciated if you just hit that subscribe button, the like button whenever possible, and yeah, because the percentage of you that aren't subscribed that watch the content do help out based on views, but not as much based on, what could help more adding to the subscriber count. I'm sure if people actually did hit that button, we could hit 1K in no time. So, yeah. I do thank you if you could hit that button. And with that said, let's move on into whatever review we're going into. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Showtime knows the Blazer King here with King's Critiques. Starting off with my review for Re:Zero Season 2. Since I decided to start watching that instead, I just continue with the other show I'm watching. Maybe I'll just kind of like interchange between them and just, work like that. So we started where the last season ended off with the three words that everybody became accustomed to for a little while within that arc. Who is Rem? Now, it's not like she disappeared completely, as we'd soon find out, because they cut to Rem and Crush happening upon some dude just standing in the middle of the road. Weird, right? By the way, this dude kind of looks like the main character from World Trigger and has the same facial expressions as a Soul Eater character. And I haven't seen World Trigger yet, I just know what the main character looks like. But that's beside the point. And, two parts of their caravan just got absolutely slaughtered in the blink of an eye. So when they saw that dude, they were kind of like, this is a bit weird. So, of course, after Rem had to rescue Crush from being, well, crushed, diced, whatever word you want to use, he starts going on and on about she shouldn't have done that and yada yada, and then Crush starts threatening him, and he's like, man, can't you just let a guy talk without interrupting him? Sorry. So he continues to go on and on and on, and she does her little air slash sword thing that she does to completely no avail. And then he starts complaining about you can't just interrupt somebody. So when she tried to do it again, well, they got interrupted this time by the other guy's help, and they introduced themselves shortly after a little bit of monologuing by the creepy little dude that was walking through corpses as the Sin Archbishop of, I don't know why I tripped over that word, of Gluttony, and the Sin Archbishop of Greed. So you can already tell that Crush and Rem are probably fucked and not in the fun way. But we have a little fight scene. Crush gets disarmed and Rem has to go at it one-on-one after she passes out from blood loss. Not a hard task for a demon like Rem, right? Nah, fam. Rem actually fares herself quite well against Gluttony. However, Greed has his own little thing where he just needs to blink and somebody is beaten in a fight. So Gluttony proceeds to do his thing to Crush and Rem. However, the weird thing about that is, while going through the injured people in the place where they stopped, with all the villagers, Subaru soon found out that Rem's body was still around. People just forgot about her. At least that's different than the white whale thing, right? Anyway, he kills himself to try and jump back to, his last save point, as it were. Sadly, this time around, that didn't go so well for him, as he just blinked back to the whole part where he had the conversation with Amelia about, Petra killing him and Amelia trying to defend herself and, say that she's not going to be beaten by a kid and yada yada. And then he just had to ask right away, do you remember who Rem is? Or something. I'm paraphrasing. And again, she says, who is Rem? So, there's a bit of a mental collapse about that, but not as bad as last time. Until Puck showed up while he was watching Rem sleep and explained who Gluttony is and what he does. Seems the dude actually has some powers, kind of like the white whale, where if he eats somebody, he actually just eats their name and their memories. In some cases, both. Could be one or the other, could be both, and Crush and Rem were both affected, just in two different ways. Rem had both taken from her, Crush only had her memories taken away. So she could remember her name, kinda, sorta, and she just didn't remember her memories, which kinda sucks. So, basically that happens. They have a little argument about if they're remaining allies or if they're not. And after a bit of a back and forth between the lack of memories, Crush and Felix, I still don't know. They say Felix like 9 times out of 10, so I'm just gonna go with that, I guess. He has a little cry and she comforts him, and then they continue their discussion about trying to get payback and vengeance against Gluttony, not knowing anything about greed. And then it basically ends with Subaru just having himself a little, cry about everything. Just like, man, I tried so hard, but in the end, it just didn't even matter. Okay, I had to fit that in somewhere. So it seems like the next few episodes will be them trying to go against Gluttony and try to get Crush and Rem their memories and stuff back. Now, obviously, I've seen everything on Twitter and Facebook about how the season goes, so I kind of can't wait to see how it gets from this point to where it currently is. So I'll see you guys in the next episode review. Okay, so, the next episode. Subaru and company find the rest of the villagers waiting in the village for people to get back from the sanctuary. The problem is, Rem and company are not back yet, so they decide that Subaru and Amelia are just going to go back to the mansion, joined along by Otto, of course, because he's apparently now their chauffeur. And when they get back to the mansion, they run into a familiar face to Amelia, not so much to Subaru. And, oh god, what the hell? I already forgot her name. Frederica? Something like that. I've only seen her once in the name mentioned like 4 times in the one episode, so excuse me if I forget exactly. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, though. Anyway. They have their whole little discussion about telling her who Rem is and what's going on and the situation at hand. And they need to know what Roswell is thinking. So, to do that, Subaru is told he should talk to Betty. And he finds Beatrice's room very easily, as per usual, and they have a little discussion. However, a couple things annoy her. One, that Subaru has the gospel from Broccoli Head, who, little note, for some reason, in the last episode, or this episode, I forget which it was, they called him Petaljuice, and that his name starts with B, I'm pretty sure, but regardless, Also, another side note, I tried starting this in the dub and his voice just sounded so different I couldn't. Usually I'm not so picky about dubs, but I just couldn't. Um, yeah. Anyway, during his talk with Betty, that kind of annoyed her a little bit. And then the second thing is after he told her he killed Broccoli Head and his followers, she actually gets a little bit angry and asked another question to do with killing the sin spirit self or something like that. I'm paraphrasing as I tend to do. And he didn't know what she was talking about, so she just kind of got pissed off and said that if he wants any more of his questions answered, to go to the sanctuary himself. So after blasting him out of her room, looking like she's about to cry, honestly, well, he comes up with a plan with everyone else to go to the sanctuary. So they take their little trip through the forest, and you know, the new maid has to, well, the old but returning maid kind of tells him and Amelia to watch out for a dude named Garfield. No, that's not right. It's just Garfield. Though he's probably pretty hungry too. Uh, and so they take their trip into the forest, and a little gem that she hands Amelia starts to glow bright, and Subaru takes that as a bad thing, takes it off her neck, and is about to toss it until he realizes, hey, Amelia has passed out. So he's about to do something to see what's going on with her until he gets ported into another realm, or at least to what we think. And he starts traveling around after seeing a pink-haired elf, and she ran off. So he goes to try and find some help, probably try to find out if Amelia's there, only to be talked to by some omnipresent voice and be transported somewhere else into a large, wide open field with only a gazebo in the middle of it, being presented with a creepier clone of Amelia. That's the best way I can put it, because she's kind of cute, but she's also a little bit creepy. And she introduced herself as the Witch of Greed, Echidna. Knuckles? No, not that kind of Echidna. So this is the part I remember seeing a bunch of stuff about sometime last year when I was, scrolling through Twitter and stuff. And of course Facebook, so there's about to be a lot of heavy stuff going down, and I am all for it. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Okay, back in it. And, this was a crazy one. First, as I said, Subaru got taken to another dimension to, well, seemingly, to meet up with the Witch of Greed, who would soon introduce herself as Echidna, as I mentioned, Knuckles and all that shit. Oh no, I said the S word before 30 seconds. Anyway. She proceeds to invite him to a little tea party to talk and chat and have a good time. And he downs the tea, and she tells him it's her body fluids. That reminds me of another anime. But anyway, that's another story. And he's kind of bitching at her about wanting to go back and wondering why the hell he's there, and she tells him he can tell her, or she tells him she can tell him whatever he wants. And at first he doesn't quite believe what she's jabbering about, he just wants out. And then she kind of breaks the reality they're in and starts to go on about all the witches' identities and how they all died, and it kind of freaked him out to the point of the reality in the middle of that not forest, but field they were in, coming back together around them, just for her to say that she kind of put the essence of the spirit of Sloth or the Sinnesloth in him, which is also still a little bit gross, but that's neither here nor there. So he just questions why, and she tells him, and then she's like, I can just send you back whenever you want. So instead of asking other questions he should be asking, he's like, oh, well, we can just chat some other time. I'm gonna vamoose then if you'll let me. So she opens the portal for him, and on his way out gives him a little gift in an overly sensual manner of being able to compete in the trial of the sanctuary. Now, we don't find out what that means until near the end of the episode. But she sends him back, and he comes out to find Otto unconscious, and a certain blonde boy kind of questioning why he just came out of the temple, and sorry. The dude is who Frederica told them not to encounter. And, Subaru's dragon went running at the guy, only gets suplexed. Just literally yeeted that dragon up over his head and slammed it down on the ground. Of course, he didn't kill it. That actually makes him a better person, especially because he stopped attacking once Subaru brought up Frederica. So then he actually escorted them to the place where Ram and everybody else is, and a couple of odd things. One, Roswell is actually incredibly injured, but they skim over that fact for explaining about what had happened and how they got there, and a little eerie moment where Roswell said that they need to mention the Witch of Greed by her name, Echidna, when speaking of her. I'm guessing that's a bit of foreshadowing to later on. So he says that he got injured like that because he tried taking the trial of the sanctuary and, well, trial of the graveyard, because the whole place is the witch's graveyard. That's also brought up. And now the only one who they think can do it is Amelia. So, of course, Amelia has to go and talk to the villagers and get their opinion on things. And Jesus, it's getting later. Of course, I'm going to be yawning. Or if I should just sleep when I'm done with this one. We'll see. Maybe I'll watch one more and do another recording. Anywho. So Amelia goes and gets the village's support and asks for Subaru's special support, and he makes a fool out of himself as always. So later on, they approach the graveyard entrance or the tomb entrance or whatever, and it glows. She goes in to take part in the trial. Then it stops glowing, and Garfield is like, that shouldn't happen while someone is still in there participating in the trial. So, of course, Mr. Showboat Subaru has to run in there, and due to the gift he got from Echidna, little known to everybody else, the place started to glow, because it only does so to those qualified to compete in the trial. And he got in, and finds Amelia unconscious, only to get knocked out from some third-party source, I'm guessing the tomb. And he woke up in an, unfamiliar bed to us, with a bunch of action figures and stuff surrounding him. And then, like something out of a scene of Bleach, he had somebody jumping directly on him as soon as he woke up, calling themselves his father. Wait a minute, did he just get a flashback to his actual real life before he got to where he Lugna got? I forgot what the hell the place is called. But regardless, into this fantasy realm he has entered? Well, seems to be so, and because the thing did say you'll have to make good on your former, or not make good on your former, something about reliving your past or something like that. I'm paraphrasing again. as I tend to do sometimes, because even though I just watched it like 5 minutes ago, I still am a little bit, woohoo, up here. Plus, I'm tired, so. But, apparently the next episode is going to be him going through his old life to try and figure out how to escape, I guess would be the right word. This is going to be one of those things where I'll probably just keep watching until I'm ready to pass out, but we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll do another one, maybe I won't. Regardless, you'll either see me in the same shirt or a different shirt for the next review. Alright, so we're back for one more before I decide to go to bed, and then you'll definitely see me in a new shirt. This was a wild one, too. So, Subaru spent the whole episode with his family, eating breakfast and going back to his room before experiencing that familiar pain, kind of like when he mentions return by death. But he just ignores it and pushes it off for now, and his dad questions him about if there's a girl he likes, which he just kind of shoves off as a normal teenager kind of question. So his dad proposes that, hey, if he's not going to school, why not go on a walk with him? So he starts to remember things about his past, and that basically the people of his town were building up expectations for him to be as good as his father. Which, that's a normal thing when a kid is good at everything as a kid, and his father was also awesome at everything. But eventually, things start coming back to Subaru piece by piece during conversations with his father and his mother and a couple other random people. And during the conversation with his father, he does start to remember things, including about the fact he does have a girl he likes and the fact that there's a girl who likes him despite him being, well, who he is. Though he can't seem to remember either of their names immediately. However, after a conversation with his mother and saying that he's going to go back to school for the time being, since that's the mindset he's under, she decides to walk with him and have a conversation with him as well. Gets a bit awkward, some emotional mother-son talking, something about putting a finger up his butt to get a suppository up there. That part was kind of weird. But I think in both cases, between father and mother, they were both trying to remind him that although he's trying to live up to somebody else's expectations all the time, he just needs to be himself. Great moral of the story, right? So he takes that to heart and fixes the one thing he didn't do on his way out before he got transported to the world he's currently in. And he said for his mother to take care of herself as well and, a general goodbye. To which they flashed that he didn't do that before he left for the convenience store that fateful night. So, he goes on to school, and to what would be normally expected to, open the door and see a bunch of your classmates kind of look at you weird and then start talking shit and run a whole other mental game. Instead, he sees a lone woman standing near the windowsill, like some sort of cliche rom-com anime scene. However, you'd expect it to have been Amelia, considering she passed out before he got into the temple at the end of the last episode. But no, it's her evil twin, at least that's what I'm going to refer to her as, because she really does look like an evil, creepier Amelia. Echidna. Just kind of chilling like, oh hey, you actually showed up a lot sooner than I expected. And that's where they cut it off. So, is she the final piece of the trial that needed to be gone through? Or is it more of a personal thing that he's actually met her and they've talked and she gave him a personal pass into this trial? And as much as I would love to stay up and watch more and find out exactly what's entailed for him, I should get some rest by this point, so I'm gonna do that, and I'll try to watch and record more of these tomorrow night, because I think before I get back to the other show I'm watching, I'm gonna, binge this every now and then when I don't have stuff to record. And since I'm like days ahead on Mega Man currently, which by the way, go to the gaming channel and watch that because at the time of recording this, that series is still going on. So go check that out. Like, even if I'm already finished with it by the time this is uploaded, go check it out because it was fun. A little bit delayed here and there, but hey, as far as the show goes, I'm loving season 2 so far, and I can't wait to see where it goes in the next episode. So let's see what happens, and shirt change. Okay, so we're back in it with 3-0, and as I said, different shirt. One quick note that I forgot to mention last episode that's more of a funny thing. Apparently this time around the dragon meows like a cat, which is kind of weird. Anyway. So, Subaru has his talk with Echidna about, how he passed the trial and how he's allowed to go through the next 2 trials because, everything comes in 3 as far as video games and anime go for the most part. But he's like, nah, I don't think I'll do that. Someone else will, who's a lot more qualified than I am. By the way, you look cute in that schoolgirl uniform. And then he deuced out. He said the compliment to her the first couple minutes of the episode, but whatever, I took that. Anyway. So he left and woke Amelia up after she did her trial, and apparently it kind of scarred her like the 5th time that he had to try and help Rem and everyone else from getting killed. To the point where she was kind of out of it for a while and needed to be put under bed rest. So it went throughout the night, and he had a discussion with, Rem and Otto and Garfield and that little elf girl who he saw when he got ported to the temple the first time, though he wasn't allowed to make note of that for some reason or another. Weird how that happens, right? And she explains the whole situation about if a mixed blood tried to leave the the graveyard, then they basically die, if they don't pass through the trials first and free the sanctuary, as it were. So he gives his whole kudos to Amelia to try it again the next day after she regains consciousness. And in the interim, he also has a discussion with Roswell, which, hey, big surprise, he's a douchebag. He basically led and expected the events with the witch's cult to happen in order to give Amelia more favor in the royal selection. What an asshole, right? So Subaru got pissed about that, of course, but there wasn't really a lot that could have been done either because, well, Ram was there to protect Roswell from getting socked at least, and in his injured state, he probably couldn't have done a lot in return. But now those two have a little secret agreement to go on, and then came Amelia's second attempt at the trial, which, again, didn't go well. She came out of there crying because she couldn't face her past, which Subaru had successfully done, so all signs are pointing to him to have to go and do the trial. Well, other 2 trials, anyway. So that happens, and then eventually they figure out that, hey, we can just take the pure humans and go back through the barrier. And even after being warned that that wouldn't be too smart, they did it anyway. At least for everyone from the village and Subaru to go back to the mansion and see how things are and talk to Frederica and Beatrice about a couple things. However, a little bit of an issue. When they got back to the mansion, it seemed quiet. Too quiet. One of those type of situations. So as he's running through trying to see Frederica or Petra, he eventually realizes, wait, Rem, and goes to see where her unconscious body is. Only to fall down and over and notice that her body had been brought out into the hallway and she had been killed. Now, who could have done that? Oh, right, reflect on the beginning of season 1 to where, Subaru hears the voice of Booby McStabstab, Elsa, and he had been gutted again. Man, it had been a while since he had to reset like that from being killed from another source than his own hands. Well, his own hands or his own will. So it seems like he's going to reset. Now, to what point? Guess we'll find out. Probably after he came out of the temple from the first trial of the sanctuary. At least that's what I'd imagine would have been his last checkpoint from after he talked to Echidna. Because I don't think she would have had... she knows all the shit that's going on with him. So I honestly don't think she would let it go anywhere before that. But it's only 1 in the morning, so I got a good, several episodes in me. So I will get back with the next one shortly. Alright, so we getting into the spicy shit right now. It came back from, Subaru getting gutted again to, as I thought, him reappearing immediately after he ended the trial. And he proposed that, after Amelia regained... Sorry, a little bit of heartburn, I guess. After Amelia regained her sense of self-worth or whatever I'm trying to say, he proposed to her directly, hey, maybe I should run the trials for you, and that kind of shifted things from where they were in the last timeline. So everyone was kind of against that idea. Amelia thought betrayed by him because he couldn't trust her, supposedly. And Garth was kind of pissed off at the suggestion, even though he was behind it last time. So the conversation kind of moved along, and he ended up speaking to Roswaal, like, hey, why don't we tell the villagers to go back to their home, and I'll go check on things at the mansion, but you and Garth need to kind of relay this information. And Roswaal's like, well, I don't know why, but sure, take Ram with you, though. So that all goes over well and stuff, and Subaru and Ram arrive back at the mansion seemingly on time as Petra greets them. And they have a couple of little back and forths between Ram and Petra and Ram and Frederica. All is well and normal. Ram has her moment to look at Ram and concur what she's being told by Subaru. And then things get a bit messy, where Elsa actually pops back up in the middle of their little discussion with blade to Petra's throat, ready to shish kebab the lolly. However, a little fight scene breaks out and everyone gets away mostly unscathed. Some needles in the backside and a few cuts, but nothing severe. Until they have the decision of, instead of running away, the 4 of them, they're gonna go back in to save Rem and Beatrice. So Frederica strips naked and goes beast mode and hops back in to try and 1v1 Elsa, while the rest of them go to save Rem and Beatrice. Sorry for the pause, I thought my door was going to get knocked on because I usually get interrupted when I'm trying to do things like this. Anyway. So they go do that, and for some reason there's a mob beast on the second floor, so they kind of need to try and run away from that. So Ram leads it off, and Subaru and Petra are left to go save Rem from inevitable demise since she can't save herself. To which all that gets thrown through a loop because he gets knocked out after having a sweet little moment with the lolly, and Ram saves them, only for Subaru to regain consciousness and look at the little girl's severed arm in his hand, and it's just, ooh, sorry, dude. So, of course, a mob beast, I guess, attacks the dragon-drawn carriage, and throws him back up to the second or third floor. So he encounters Elsa, and she's about to skewer him for like the 10th time. So he just shuts himself in a random door, saying that he's going to protect Rem, and who does he find in that door but, of course, little Betty, and asking why she saved him, because he's assuming that's what went on and not just him randomly going through her door like he tends to do once in a while. I'm kind of curious as to why she might have saved him as well, because last we knew, she despised him. But hell, maybe this will give them a little bit of time to talk before he has to end up killing himself again to save everybody else. But every piece of new information he gets, he at least brings over to his new life, so that's good, right? Wonder how long that'll last, honestly. Like, I wonder if there's a point during his return by death where he just stops remembering things from the past lives. That'll be fun to find out. Anyway, next episode. Alright, so the episode rolls in after Beatrice saved him, that she has no clue why she did it, and he goes on bitching and complaining that he wants to go back and save Rem, and she tells him that Rem has already been killed. So, of course, his first instinct is to try and kill himself to return by death again. But this time, Beatrice won't allow it. And then he asks why and kicks a table over and starts to cry and bitch and complain. And she stops him from doing it again, and then eventually says it's not what's written in the book, because he notices the gospel, but it's not the gospel he brought that was the sin of sloths. No, it's a different gospel, one that she can actually read. Sorry. And why would she be able to read a gospel if it wasn't given to her? Weird, right? So he starts to question her, and they have an arguing contest back and forth, and she eventually uncovers that everything she had done up to that point was because the gospel told her to do it. So the unfortunate part of that is Beatrice might not actually be a good guy? Question mark? And the unfortunate part is Elsa pops into the library and sees Subaru in his pathetic state and was about to kill Beatrice, but he grabbed hold of her leg and pissed her off to the point where she killed him first. Good thing, though, because that allowed him to, RTD again, and this time he actually did go back to the point of after he cleared the first trial, unlike what he thought he was going to. So he ran through things again, based off from how he did it the first time, and he was trying to retrace his steps to the T. However, this time around, Garfield wanted to speak to him alone and in private, and the lolly hag, I guess, because that's what he called her. I'm going to just refer to her, because I can't remember. It's like Ryuzu or something like that was her name, but I'll probably swap between both every time I refer to her. Anyway. So, yeah. He has a conversation with her and Garfield and tells them about his plan of getting the villagers out and wanting to keep it a secret until the next day, and that he'll participate in Amelia's trial instead. He also doesn't want them to mention that, and then he gets throttled and taken captive, I guess is the right word to use. Anyway, I say that too much. He gets taken captive and hog-tied and gagged and blindfolded and probably lots of stuff he would have rather done with Amelia. So he gets stuck in there for a few days, has a few attempts at trying to kill himself until he just gets exhausted about it. And they hold a search party the first night, and Otto was about to mention that he saw Subaru walking away with Garfield, and Garfield takes him to a sidebar and's like, dude, don't you fucking say anything. I'll give you this pretty little gemstone if you don't say anything. And my thought was, oh god, this man's actually gonna take it, isn't he, and shut his mouth. But, he actually ends up rescuing Subaru a few days later and explaining everything that's been going on, and mentions that he considered Subaru a friend. To which, at first, Subaru seems shocked beyond belief, but then he eventually snaps out of it and is like, he has a good laugh. Something he probably hasn't had after one of his mind breaks in a little while. And then, after they have their little, touching moment of friendship, Otto takes him out of the cell he was in and goes to meet up with Ram, who he lined up to help take him across the barrier again. And, Garfield finds out that the cell is empty and gets all pissed off, and he goes beast mode. We also get some more backstory, exposition, that's the word I'm looking for, about Frederica, that she's a quarter mob beast, or, well, not mob beast, but has that sort of demi-human blood in her. So she can actually go to and from the sanctuary at will, even though she doesn't. Probably good reason about that, though. And that'll lead us in wherever the hell is going to happen next episode. Probably him going back to the mansion again to warn Frederica and Petra and Beatrice and try and save Rem and all that stuff. And, well, I got at least a few more episodes in me before I go to bed, so let's see what happens in the next episode, because the more drama that unfolds from this is just really spicy, and I love it. Okay. So, Otto rescued him in the end of the last episode. We all know about that. Then took him to Ram to try and get back to the mansion and all that jazz. However, he wants to make a pit stop to talk to Roswell about Beatrice and everything going on back there. Ask him a bunch of questions. Roswell tells him the same thing that Ram already told him with a few pieces of additional information. So, with that, he's ready to go back to the mansion. Problem is, Garfield kind of interrupts him from that endeavor, and Ram decides to take Garfield on one-on-one, and that goes mostly fine up until the point where Otto and Subaru take off with Partash, and then Garfield starts rampaging in his direction in beast mode and ends up slaughtering a bunch of innocent people in his path, including Otto and a bunch of the villagers who were supposed to help him get to the mansion without anything bad happening. A lot of good that did. So he ended up getting tossed back into a cell, and it wasn't locked this time when he woke up, which he found kind of weird, so he traveled outside to find out what was going on. It was daylight outside, and it was snowing everywhere, which was kind of weird. Did it have something to do with Amelia and Puck, or was it just a natural occurrence? Now, that's not the weird part. The weird part is he found a random rabbit and it hopped over to him, so he was going to go pet it like a lot of people would normally if a rabbit just kind of hopped over to you. I say normally as if that's a normal thing to do. But I mean, not all rabbits are, ravenous. Which, on the topic of ravenous rabbits, he loses a finger and a hand and a foot, and then one bunny had turned to 3, and 3 turned into 5 and 6, and the numbers kept growing until there were hundreds of flesh-hungry rabbits. with a little horn on top. So that was probably the most brutal way he had died so far, was being eaten alive by flesh-eating rabbits. Like, no joke, there were hundreds of rabbits tearing at him, and that was some pretty brutal stuff. Like, he's died a lot of brutal ways, but man, that's gotta be the worst so far. But then he revives again next to Amelia in the tomb and starts bashing his head, questioning what the hell just happened and why it keeps happening. So, as soon as some blood is drawn, Echidna is like, "Hey, you've been invited to a tea party again." So he pops back into her realm and feels surprisingly calm as opposed to how he was just a few seconds ago. Confers with her that had only happened moments after the last time they met, and she was like, yeah. So they have a little conversation that eventually breaks down to her asking what he's been wanting to tell her this whole time that he's been staring at her. To which he says the thing that he's been trying to admit to a lot of people, that he returns by death. And as soon as he's allowed to say it once without feeling that crushing feeling on his heart or having somebody around him die, he just starts repeating it over and over and over and over and over and over again, because he's been waiting so long to try and admit that to somebody. They just broke down crying about it as he kept repeating it. And the Witch of Greed, somebody that we were led to think was a bad person, comforted him about it. Said that she knows, she's been watching the whole time, but that's all she's been doing is watching. And she wants to hear about it directly from him. Now, that doesn't seem so wrong, does it? Though, that also leaves to question, if she's only been watching, who is the witch that keeps screwing with him when he tries to admit something? Because honestly, when she said she knows, I was half expecting her to admit that she's the one that fucks with him every time he tries to admit it. But based on what I'm gathering from what she said, that's not the case. So is it one of the other witches? Like, the one that Sloth thought he was the Archbishop of Pride? Or maybe Lust? Oh, plus the little tidbit of Beatrice's gospel apparently isn't a gospel. It's a book that tells the truth, but Roswell only told her that's what it was called. So that's a bunch of interesting information to gather from this episode. And is he going to be able to go back soon so he can see what's going on at the mansion and question Beatrice, and Amelia gets the job done in the village and can go through the trial successfully, or what? All this next time will be found out soon on ReZero. At least for me. For you guys, it'll be just another couple seconds while I pop back with another review, so can't wait to see what happens. Okay, so there's a lot to go through in this one. Where the hell did the last one even end off? Alright, him being eaten alive by rabbits and reviving and then meeting Echidna again. So, he asks Echidna a bunch of questions to find out what the hell's going on exactly, and, talking about return by death and if it has a limit to how many times it can be used, to which she explains probably not. The witch is letting him return by death as many times as he needs to reconstruct his own destiny, and if that happens to have positive influences on other people's destinies, then all the better for him. So he continues on to ask about the rabbits, and she tells him that they're called Great Rabbit. It's one unified mind. We have a lot of stories like that in fiction, I guess, to where an entire colony can live off a hive mind, basically. So he gets told that it was the Witch of Gluttony that actually made the white whale and the great rabbit and another creature called the black snake, which I imagine we'll find out what that is eventually. So he asks to speak to her, and Echidna warns that that's not the best idea, because if his mind breaks there, then he's just basically gonna end up in a state like Rem. But he doesn't care, and he asks to meet up with her. So Echidna swaps out. Unfortunately, Daphne gets kind of usurped by another sin, the Witch of Pride, also known as Typhoon, who kind of literally breaks Subaru apart. You know, rips off an arm, then breaks his leg and has that severed, and goes through her own little spiel about, you know, someone who's not a bad guy shouldn't feel sin, and then after he's literally broken into pieces, like that one time he was frozen and shattered, then she swaps out for another witch, the Witch of Wrath, Minerva, who is probably my new waifu for this series, not gonna lie, because she's actually really hot for some reason, but she punches him back to normal. As stupid as that sounds, her healing is done by just rapidly punching in the direction of somebody's injury. And after a little bit of a tsundere moment with her, she swaps out to the witch he wanted to talk to, Daphne, who at first I kind of thought was the Witch of Lust because she's like bound and blindfolded in a sarcophagus like thing. So he asks about the rabbit and she talks in riddles, but he gets the answer he wanted that basically was if a strong enough magic user appeared before the rabbits and used a spell to wipe them all out at one time, it would work. And he admitted to killing the white whale already, so she kind of challenged him to take out the rabbit, and even I imagine the snake was kind of a given for challenging him to kill them if he wanted to, before switching back to Echidna. To which they continue their talk for a little while before he starts to feel weird, and she tells him that's his time to go soon, so he asks a couple more questions that probably, have a lasting effect. And she just asks for a little bit of payment. That payment being the feelings and emotions that went into Petra's good luck charm several episodes back. Not sure what use that's going to be, but I guess we'll find out in time. And then he returns to the tomb where he was unconscious to not find Amelia next to him, so he was like, who woke me up? So he left and saw the entire field before him clouded in shadowy darkness. And then a familiar sight started to approach him out of that shadow. The Witch of Envy, Satella. So she approached him and continues to go on and on about, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, meh, 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 meh. And he's kind of freaked out by this to the point where he can't really move. Luckily, Garfield is around and can save him. Otherwise, he might have been absorbed into the darkness and never been able to return by death again. But after escaping, they realize that Satella is not heading towards them. She's actually heading in an opposite direction, towards the barrier. So he automatically jumps to conclusion of, wait, shit, she's on the way to Roswell's mansion. So he has to, of course, go off and try to save Rem, Beatrice, Frederica, etc. Or should I say Petressa? Petressa. I tried to make a pun and it didn't work. Bite me. So the last scene of the episode was the shadows closing in on Roswell in his, bed where he's all injured and shit, to where he pulled out what looked like a gospel as well, and started to say some things that make me think, is he the Archbishop of Envy? Because that kind of is sounding like what it is. Because he was basically accepting her shadowy embrace without any complaints. And, I like I said, I've seen spoilers on Twitter and Facebook and stuff about how the episodes are going in the next 15 or so episodes. And that's honestly where my mind's at, is he an archbishop, or is he just kind of a douchebag like he seemed the entire time? But this is seriously going to be one of those shows that I'm going to want to stay up until like the wee hours of the morning before trying to get any sleep, because if questions keep rising, I'm going to keep wanting to watch and I won't get any sleep. Honestly, at this point, I don't give a shit. So I'm gonna hop right into the next one and see what's going on. Oh man, this just keeps getting more and more interesting. Alright, so from what we saw at the end of the last episode, he was going to try and rush back to the mansion to stop Satella from invading beyond the barrier, to which he was successful in cutting her off because Subaru, Garfield, and a bunch of copies of Ryuzu, I almost forgot her name, I was going to call her something else. That's right, I said copies of her. Kinda came about the scene, and the witch cut them off from cutting her off. Kinda counterproductive, don't you think? And went on an all-out attack. However, the clones exploded, and Garfield got ripped to shreds, even in beast mode. That sucks. So Subaru was trying to bitch and complain and defend himself, as she kept repeating those same words over and over again, like I said a few moments ago. To which he exclaimed that he'd rather love Echidna or any other witch but her. And then he got totally sucked up into her void. So he was getting blasts of memories that he wasn't even aware of. Things he had never seen. To which he took the assumption that they were memories of other people that had been swallowed by Satella. And somehow he got a sharp object to appear out of literally nowhere to stab himself with to kill himself in RBD. Now, in the last moments of that life, he pulled off the cloak that was covering Satella's face, and she did look a lot like Amelia. Now, is that to say that Satella possessed Amelia's body after she failed her trial? Or was it Amelia and it just awoke a dark side of her? Or what's going on with that? But the next time Subaru woke up and saw Amelia's face, he started to break down crying. To which, this time around, instead of him comforting her from her own mental breakdown, she had to comfort him again. So they came out, all was normal, things progressed how he wanted it to. And then he snuck off to a secret tomb that he had seen in somebody else's memory and found a secret passage leading to a nude pink-haired girl in a giant magic crystal. And it soon is revealed that that is the real Ryuzu, and every other one, Black Cloak, White Cloak, whatever, are just copies with her own memories and shit implanted. And apparently, due to drinking that tea during Echidna's little tea parties, he gained the ability to control the Ryuzus. Pretty nifty. And also learned that Garfield had been to Echidna's tea party and hung out with her and was Ryuzu referred to Echidna as Garfield's lover. That's kind of weird. But it was probably a metaphor. So, of course, Subaru goes about the rest of his business and talks with Otto before going to sleep for the night, then writes his letter to Amelia and everybody else that he has some shit to go and do. So, on his way back to the mansion, he runs into Garfield, who, of course, has to threaten him because he smells heavily like a witch. However, this time Subaru knows why, because he apparently smells the witch more specifically than like when Rem does, and tries to talk shit and mention that he was just testing Garfield. And Garfield keeps assuming that he's, a bad guy, gonna come back and do something different. But Subaru assures him that he's not. Eventually ending in him speaking the name of the episode, and he doesn't want anybody else to deal with the bullshit that he's had to go through time and time and time and time and time and time again. So Garfield lets him through. He gets back to the mansion and tells Frederica and Petra to be safe and careful. Take Rem, leave the mansion, and go somewhere to hide. And then he goes up to talk with Beatrice, who was apparently expecting him. And instead of asking why he's there, she apparently has an idea as to why he's there, saying that her contract with the mansion is to end because of something to do with Subaru specifically. Apparently that future telling gospel of hers let her know that information, because, this timeline doesn't really have phones, so it's not like Roswell could have called and been like, oh yeah, by the way, you're gonna be hanging out with Subaru for a while now. So apparently whatever Roswell told him to tell her, she already assumed by this point. So I can't wait to hear more about that information, and because it's one of those things that keeps leaving me questioning what's going on, I really just want to just keep watching even though it's almost 5 in the morning. Sorry. To break, timelines and shit. So yeah, I have to keep watching. I do. So I'll see you guys in a couple moments to give my thoughts on the next one. Hey, things are getting heavy. Like, they get heavier and heavier every single episode, and I'm just... Okay, so... Subaru and Beatrice had their little back and forth talk about, what was expected and what was happening, and Subaru then found out that her fake gospel that supposedly told the future was blank for a majority of it, and Beatrice was just going crazy. So in the end, she basically answered the question that he was supposed to ask of, what was going on. And she started complaining about and he figured out that she originally signed a contract with Echidna to defend the Great Library of Knowledge. And she then went on to say that the only way to end her contract was to kill her. And then he went on about how he didn't want to do that, and they went back and forth for a little while. Her eventually saying something along the lines, well, if you're not going to kill me, say I'll be your most important person, blah, blah, blah. They argued, she cried. And then Elsa came in, and Booby McStab did her thing. But Beatrice kind of blinded her with Shamrock, and they got out of there at a quick rate to try and get back to the village, because apparently a second person was meant to attack the village, Beatrice and Petra included. And they ran across that second person after she had already done her job and killed everybody. And weird part is, you remember back in the beginning of the first season with the mob beast attack and those rabid dogs? Yeah, it was the same little girl that warned Subaru about the dog and all that stuff that was going on. Weird twist, right? So while she was basically providing a distraction, Elsa caught up to them and was going to try and kill them, but Beatrice was able to fight her off and apparently freeze her and shatter her very being, so what we thought. So she was about to kill the other girl, who Subaru wanted to get some information from. That didn't go so well. And hey, while they were bitching back and forth about killing Melee or not, apparently Elsa wasn't dead and finished Beatrice off as she wanted. And then handicapped Subaru to the point where he couldn't move very well and he was blind in one eye because she stabbed him. Instead of just finishing him off, Beatrice teleported him back to where he came from. Gee, thanks, Betty. So he came out to discover the place was snowing again, but wasn't covered in shadows this time, at least. So Garfield and Ryuzu were out there to help him find Roswell and talk to him, especially because the first thing he saw before he went to do that was Amelia proclaiming that she loved him. And she had that look in her eye the same time as the first time he ran into Satella. So, well, we kind of know where that went, that she had already been possessed. So he went outside and said what was happening and that it wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for some crazy shit going on. So he has to go talk to Roswell, and he was going to go have his conversation. So it got pretty heated, pretty hot, pretty heavy. And speaking of hot and heavy, while Ram was trying to protect Roswell from Garfield's attack, well, threatening he was going to hurt him, they both got killed. Ooh, big oofs. And not only did Ram get killed, but Garfield, who was injured, was going to try and protect her, then received a swift kick to the face that finished the job. Roswell's a brute. So they talked, they chattered, and had some exchanges after a bit of unpleasant warnings from Roswell, I guess. That Subaru shouldn't look so shocked after all he's seen, because Roswell knows about all that has happened for the most part, because that thing that I said might have been a gospel at the end of the last episode apparently was the other version of that future-telling book that Betty had. But apparently he doesn't know the specifics to what happens with Subaru, just that he can start over. So he just beats the shit out of him instead of killing him. And then the Great Rabbit shows up early because the snow is falling and there's a lot of mana in one place together. So Roswell goes to sacrifice himself after saying the new one of him will take his place. And he gets eaten by the Great Rabbit, and then I'm assuming Subaru took some nips and gnaws as well. Because when he goes to shakily walk himself back to Satella's presence, he had a lot of injuries, including another missing foot. So he rested his head in her lap because it was still his darling Amelia's figure, and then I'm assuming she restarted him again because she wants him to live his life as much as possible until she can be in it, or something like that, I'm imagining. But that's where the episode ended off, and by how the first second of the next episode looked when I moved into it, it seemed like he's going to be restarting again, hopefully from the right point, and he can, like, figure everything out on how he's going to do this time around. Alright. Because I bet he's kind of sick of living through the same points in his life 5 or 6 times before getting it right. Especially now that he knows that a few people know about what's going on, so maybe that's some good information to him. It's almost 5:30 in the morning, and I can't stop watching, so I'll probably bring to you at least one or two more wearing this clothing. So, see you on the next one. Alright. Subaru revived next to Amelia's body for, what, the 4th, 5th, 6th time by now. So again, he follows things as they're supposed to be. Yada, yada, yada. However, this time he goes right to where he needs to be to try and ask for Echidna's help. However, this time, instead of getting Echidna's help like that, he, well, a little bit of an issue with that. He starts being shown visions from what the timeline would be like after he died, for every time he died. And with how many times he's died, can you imagine how crazy that must have made him? Just flash after flash after flash after flash. Good things, bad things, weird things, messed up things, just over and over and over and over again for things that could have happened after he died. And, dude, this man just seeing all those potential timelines just kind of messed with him. And after running into what he thought was Rem trying to talk to him and calm him down, he realized that was not the case. So he backed off and broke the vision made by another witch, the Witch of Lust, who then he was pulled out from her territory to talk to Echidna once more. And she chatted with him, talked with him, and said if he formed a contract with her, that she could help him. At first he was tempted, till they were interrupted by Minerva, the Witch of Wrath. And she was going on and on about her thing about why he shouldn't form a contract with her. And then the other witches started to show up one by one, which, side note, Witch of Sloth, I can understand why Broccoli Head wanted her love, because damn. But yeah, all the witches showed up and they were talking, chatting, explaining the good and bad about what Echidna was trying to get across with Subaru. And she had a very long-winded speech about it, that they would basically be using each other for good and bad purposes. And then he asked about Beatrice, and she explained, yeah, I made a contract with her, but no, I don't know who that person who's supposed to kill her is. And he's just like, wait, what? But aren't you the one who told her all that? And she's like, yeah, but I forced Beatrice to agonize over who it'd be for all of eternity until she eventually found somebody. So, of course, that annoyed him, pissed him off, irritated him, to where he had qualms about wanting to make a contract with her, so he said no. And she looked quite upset. However, before she was able to boot him back to his own reality and let him deal with all that stuff, they had a 7th visitor. Satella decided to come to the witch's graveyard and join everybody instead of, doing what she was doing in the other world. So that can't possibly be anything good, can it? Now, are we going to actually see Satella in her real form or taking on the guise of Amelia again? Unless that's the point, is that deep down inside she is Amelia, which that wouldn't surprise me by this point either. Still not sure if that was the last one I'm watching for the night. You'll obviously tell the difference, as I explained a little while ago, that if I'm wearing a new shirt, it's a new day. And if not, I decide to watch another one, because what is sleep? So, and honestly, as long as it keeps sending me off on cliffhangers like this, I'm gonna want to keep watching until I literally can't keep my eyes open anymore. Does it seem like I can't keep my eyes open anymore? It's kind of weird to see how my eyes look when I'm trying to stare at the screen and the camera at the same time. Just fucking weird. Okay, one more before I go to bed, at least as far as recording these reviews go. So, the first half of the episode is basically him being confronted by all of the witches and, you know, questioning what he's supposed to do and how he's supposed to do it and this, that, and it eventually breaks down to him biting his tongue to try and, you know, reset by death. And, you know, a couple of them are like, just let him die, a couple of them are like, save him. So he goes through his own little delusion about all the shit that's happened in the real past and the fake past, and eventually he comes to the realization that he doesn't want to die. So Wrath headbutts him and heals him, so his tongue is back in place and he's not bleeding everywhere. So eventually, after his little panic attack and his bawling out and trying to kill himself stops, he stands back up tall and kind of has a passive-aggressive attitude toward all of them. Because, I mean, on one hand, it's a bunch of evil witches who tried to destroy the world as they know it. On the other hand, they all seem to have some sort of weird belief in him that he can do anything he puts his mind to, even if Satella gave him the power of return by death, and he's been using that for the most part to try and escape everything bad that could happen to him. Though they told him to try and use that power less. So after rejecting Echidna's help one more time, she just kind of shrugged it off and took away what she had already given him, aside the ability to remember what was going on in that world. So he can't partake in the trials anymore, as he soon found out after being woken up by Partrash and Otto, to which Partrash was the first female figure he actually believed likes him. Odd how that happens, but hey, you know, wherever love comes from, right? Even if it's a dragon. So he goes to, you know, talk to Roswaal himself again, and that discussion goes literally nowhere except for finding out that Roswaal was the one who hired the assassins, Melee and Elsa, to attack the village and the mansion simultaneously. So Subaru had to decide what was going on. You know, who he was going to save, and you know, three options of who to save: Amelia, the mansion, or the village. Can't have it every way. So after a bunch of bullshit with Roswaal, he just kind of storms out of there and goes running off into the forest, muttering to himself about he doesn't know what to do. He trips, falls, and continues to deliriously bitch at himself until Otto happened to cross him. And I'm just saying, there's something weird about this dude. Like, he shows up at just the right time every time. But Otto offers a little piece of advice for him to just take a deep breath and relax, and in the middle of that deep breath, he sucker punches Subaru and says that he needs to rely on his friends and that he will help him, it just needs a little bit of preparation. So, what exactly will be going on in the next episode? Are they going to find a way to save both the village and the mansion while also keeping Amelia sane? Or is he just gonna have to rely on return by death again? I feel bad that I've been spoiled so much by all this stuff on Twitter and Facebook to where I know kinda sorta what's gonna be happening. Which is also kind of why I want to catch up to it so badly, because for the other show I'm watching, there's spoilers, but not as bad as with this, to where I'm like a lot of episodes behind. But hey, one more heavy binge and I should be caught up. So with that said, I'm probably sleep after uploading Mega Man, and then I'll probably continue this binge tomorrow. So see you guys later. Alright, let's do this. So, episode rolls with Subaru talking to Roswell, making a bet with him. If he can save the castle and, the mansion, and the sanctuary at the same time, Roswell has to agree to drop any of his plans and help Amelia as he originally promised to win the royal selection. Roswell thinks he's blowing smoke out of his ass, but he ends up agreeing with him. Ram, not so much, because she's, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs over there. So that was that. Then Subaru and Otto figure out that they need to talk to a couple other people before things can eventually be, settled. So Subaru goes to talk to Ryuzu, one of them anyway, because apparently there's 4 of them who are the head of the clones. However, one of them, the one that tried to not kill him, but lock him up before, is apparently a bad egg. Ignore that. And that bad egg is the one who's with Garfield and locked him up before. So he talks with the one Ryuzu, and then we pan off to Ryuzu, the bad one, and Garfield talking to each other about Subaru and the witch's scent coming off from him. But Shima is the Ryuzu we'll start to call her, since that's the surname she's going with. Tells Garfield that she actually doesn't believe he has any connection to the witches. Which, of course, he doesn't believe that, so he storms off, and then we pan over to Subaru having a talk with Amelia, trying to make her feel better. Which she ends up doing to the point where she's at least able to sleep a bit, unlike she wasn't able to the night prior. And with her passed out, he decides there's one more person, or, thing he has to talk to, so he tries to wake up Puck, which he does so successfully. Now I don't know exactly what happened in their discussion, but TLDR of it, I really need to watch Frozen Bond as soon as I'm done catching up, and that'll probably end up being uploaded before this review. But I'll still wait until I'm done catching up to the series. Anyway, because, I'm pretty sure a majority of Frozen Bond has to do with what's going on in this episode. Which, another small side note, Amelia's mother, which we see in a flashback, kinda hot. Anyway. I already said that, but... So, come morning, Amelia wakes up and Puck is out of his little gemstone thing. And he admits that he's been, consciously trying to break their contract. And she kind of cries and questions why he's doing that, and he goes on to explain that if he does break their contract, then she'll remember everything that happened before she was frozen in ice, apparently, at some point or another. And Roswell originally gained her favor by saying that he could thaw the ice that has her family frozen. So that's how that connection became a thing. So Puck disappears, her little gemstone on her chest breaks, or well, the pendant, not really on her chest, but whatever. And of course, she cries herself back to sleep, and the next morning, she's missing. Well, later on in the morning, because I think it's the same day. So the villagers are looking for her, and Ram and Garfield are looking for her. Garfield, however, is more worried about Ryuzu than he is Amelia, because when he goes to find out what happened with Amelia, he discovers she's missing. So he goes to the place where the original Ryuzu is held captive in her own crystal and runs into Otto, who says that they're going to have a little discussion of their own. So it pans off from that and pans into Subaru finding Amelia. A little worse for wear, so I'm kind of curious what happened to him. But I imagine he'll probably try and work things out with her from everything that had happened, and it's another one of those things where I can't wait to see what happens next episode. So I'm about to go do that in a couple moments, so see you then. Okay. So, as we saw from the ending of the last episode, Otto confronted Garfield and was hoping to talk with him, but of course it couldn't be as simple as a little talk with Garfield, Mr. Angry Blonde Man. Reminds me a little bit of Bakugo, honestly. But, Otto ended up getting sucker punched, and Garfield thought he was going to get away. However, Otto ended up digging a trap hole for him, so to speak, while ganking his little precious gemstone. And then we got a bunch of exposition of how Otto's divine protection is to talk to animals, which we've seen a couple hints at here and there, like him talking to Patresh the other episode and all that stuff. So Otto makes a run for it after he traps Garfield, but that doesn't last so long because he eventually gets out of there and the cacophony of bugs that are surrounding him and attacking him. And yes, I am just basically glazing over the whole exposition for Otto and that whole thing. Well, I guess I'll just give a quick rundown. He discovered his powers, told his parents about them, developed them, learned to talk to the animals, bugs included. His brother found out and told him not to let other people know, but then his little brother found out and told other people, so he had to show proof, which ended up kind of ostracizing him. And then when he grew up, he got the shit kicked out of him because someone thought he was with his girlfriend, and then he got down to the bottom of it and called the daughter of one of the highest powered people in the village a tramp, basically. But he talks to the animals, so he knows that for a fact. So he got ran out of the village, became a merchant, and he ended up getting captured by Broccoli Head along his journeys, which is how Anastasia's crew found him and brought him back to Subaru and the gang so he could help out. And that's basically the, TLDR of it. Anyway, back to the main story. Garfield's running away from... Garfield's running towards Otto, and Otto apparently is bleeding from his nostrils and stuff because of overuse of his divine protection. And he has a bunch of the fire explodey type stones that were gonna explode the carriage in the last season. And he kept tossing those behind him and hoping to distract Garfield long enough for Subaru to get his time with Amelia. And we'll pan back to that in a second. So Garfield got let off and was about to finish Otto off after getting his gemstone back. However, Ram kind of appeared out of literally nowhere and joined the fight. Getting a few blows in, and Then Otto ran off when it looked like she was in danger again, and they kind of hand away from the fight scene. So I don't know if Ram and Amelia or Ram and Otto are okay, because Garfield does pop back up at the end of the episode. I'm gonna skip to mentioning that. But then we go back to this Amelia and Subaru part, which is a very touchy-feely argument between them about her saying he's a liar and he should hate her, and Puck's a liar, and blah 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 blah. And then he just keeps confessing his love for her and that he believes in her over and over and over again. And she keeps not wanting to believe him, so they go back and forth, him even getting angry at her like she wanted him to be. And that went on for several minutes until he's eventually like, you know what, fine. You want me to show you that I love you? I'll show you. You know, if you don't want this to happen, just go ahead and dodge out of the way. To which, with tear-filled eyes, she kind of just closed them and accepted whatever was to come because she knew what was going to happen. And he finally got his big yes moment in his head and, you know, planted a nice little kiss on the elf. You know, something that made her kind of snap too, as it were, believing in him for all he was saying, even though she still questioned him a little bit afterward. But she seems to believe him now. But after all that, they left the tomb, and that's where Garfield was standing, waiting for them. And, well, granted, he's a bit of a tsundere, so it's not like he admitted that. Albeit he could have just came and they're all pissed off, probably. So that shows that maybe Otto and Ram are at least alive. Maybe not conscious, but alive. And that we're going to see in the next episode, I suppose, to which I'm going to be hopping on immediately, because I'm going to try to finish catching up before I go to bed tonight. Still a few hours worth of footage to watch, but hey, I've already stayed up till 7 or 7:30 in the morning watching the past couple nights. So, I'll get back to watching and leave you guys with my hopes and anticipation that he at least didn't kill the two of them, so Subaru doesn't have to repeat the whole process. Anyway. Oh, man, this show is more of an emotional roller coaster than I thought. Like, being creepy and a little weird and scary at times is one thing, but this season is just packed full of emotions beyond that. Like, the exposition with Otto and the exposition for Garfield this episode just this is one of those times where I say, I'm not crying, you're crying. So the episode starts off with Subaru having his little showdown with Garfield, including verbally abusing him. You know, telling him that he's not as hot shit as he thinks he is. And the entire time Subaru is bitching at him, Garfield just keeps stepping backward and backward and backward, not wanting to admit to himself that Subaru is actually right. So, of course, he has to turn violent. And while they're exchanging dialogue back and forth, he eventually gets pissed off enough after Amelia stepped in front of Subaru a couple times, and Subaru just kept approaching Garfield and being like, no, I got this, don't worry, fam. So Garfield does his whole beast mode transformation thing, grows all big and scary, and then Subaru blinds him with his Shamrock and stabs him with that gem that Frederica gave him, which apparently now provides a home to Puck, or something like that, I'm assuming, because I heard Puck's voice come from the gem, so that must be the case. And that reverted Garfield back from big scary Tiger Man back to himself, so he could fight Subaru on even grounds. To which he went for, a typical sucker punch, expecting it to send Subaru flying, and Subaru stood his ground. He was bleeding and lost a tooth, but he stood his ground. And, Garfield backed up and they exchanged some more dialogue, went back and forth with it, and Subaru kept saying for him to realize what he's saying is the truth about, he actually loved his mother and isn't mad at her as much as he wants to say about her leaving the sanctuary to try and find happiness, as he put it. So he goes in to try and strike Subaru once more, and, well, Subaru leveled up, I guess, because he unlocked a new ability, the Unseen Hand. That's right, he unlocked the Sin of Sloth's ability to have something come from his form and attack people. Granted, it was mostly subconscious that it happened, but a shadow fist reached out from the deepest regions of his gut to sucker punch Garfield when he went in for the next attack, sending him flying. Now, you'd think that'd be enough, but he still stood his ground and went for another attack, albeit staggered this time. However, when he was about to, deliver another hit, and Subaru was all but ready to fight him for it and make him see his ways, he received a running headbutt by everyone's favorite dragon, who still, I say, sounds like a cat when it roars. And yeah, Partresh sent him flying, and they both kind of fell unconscious for a few hours, but excuse me, both of them at least woke up in their beloved's lap. First Subaru woke up in Amelia's lap, and Otto was there and was like, hey, how's it going? So at least he's alive, so I'm assuming Ram's alive, which we'll get to that in like a second. But Subaru ended up headbutting Otto, and a little bit of payback for last episode, or the episode before, whenever it was. And, went through the whole thing of thanks for distracting him, glad you're okay. And, of course, had to thank his dragon, because if it wasn't for her, Subaru probably would be in much worse shape. And then pan over to the other side of things, where Garfield woke up on Ram's lap, albeit only to get shoved off after he woke up. But at least Ram has a way with words, no matter how much of a bitch she is. He said, if you're going to prove yourself to the woman you care so deeply about, why don't you go back in there and complete your trial like you weren't able to do as a kid? So, swallowing his pride, that's exactly what he went to do. He walked up to the trial, went inside, and after realizing that he was actually wrong about everything that had happened, because maybe he was just trying to believe that as a kid to make himself feel better, he realized that his mother was actually leaving to try and find their father and regain the family, only to be crushed by a landslide moments after leaving the sanctuary. That part kind of sucks still, but he had his little back and forth with his sister, well, the younger version of his sister, and was able to come to terms with everything, which made him feel a lot better and respect Subaru and Amelia a hell of a lot more. To which now he even refers to Subaru as boss. And also, apparently, he's younger than Subaru, which is kind of strange, but a lot of people's ages in this show are just weird. I mean, Amelia's probably, what, like 100? But she's a half-elf, so that's kind of a given. And then you know, Amelia says it's her turn to take the trial because she doesn't want Garth to do everything for them. So she goes inside and realizes that the reason Subaru had left her throughout the night when he was supposed to stay with her was to mark up the walls with a bunch of encouraging notes and messages. So that probably made her feel a little bit better, even though she said he still needs to apologize for leaving her, but at least she didn't, like, snap and turn into Satella again. So she drops into the first trial to, have a run-in with her past. However, this time, she doesn't just drop into an unconscious state and have a panic attack. No. This time she runs into Echidna in person, and after receiving some trash talk from Echidna, poses like Subaru would, and announces herself as simply Amelia, the Frozen Witch, and she's not going to take trash from another witch just like herself. So apparently she's come to terms with the fact she is a witch, albeit not the one that they were assuming her to be. So, like, I honestly just, this show, man, I'm so close to catching up with it, and I know what's happening in the next few episodes. I know what's happening in this episode, and I honestly can't help but question it because of stuff I've seen, so I can't wait to see the actual happenings in the episode. But that said, I'll get to that review in, for you guys, just a couple seconds, so. Shit's getting crazy, yo! So, we saw Amelia start to travel into her own past and experience the things that she had to experience to clear the trial, but first she needed a little bit of regaining her memories more in depth to try and clear through the trial properly. So her and Echidna, travel through her memories and see everything that happened, including her being kind of an asshole as a child, for the record. She was told to stay put in one place and have fun. Meanwhile, she was like, oh, hey, this little spirit is telling me to run away. I'm gonna follow. So she does that and sneaks in on her mother, who actually seems to be her aunt, not her actual mother. But that's beside the point. So while she's doing that, she does it for a few days here and there. Apparently the witch cultists, yeah, they were good people and good friends with the elves. Way before anything that we know about. And apparently Juice, yeah, he apparently had a crush on Amelia's aunt. Didn't see that one come. Well, okay, I wouldn't have seen that one coming if it wasn't for all the pictures on Twitter and stuff. To which, I also just kind of thought that Mother Fortuna and Juice were her parents. So, that's the only reason yeah. So I guess at least some of the things I saw pictures of weren't 100% accurate. This kind of just threw me for a bit, but she continued to watch on and on with apparently her being friends with Juice as a kid and running through the forest with him playing hide and seek, and her aunt kind of coming across and being like, yeah, she's not so fun to chase around, is she? Before pulling off the typical motherly act of, hey, why don't you come here? Yoink! And they talked, they chatted. Mother Fortuna made a prompt. Did I just say encoding overloaded for recording my webcam? Go fuck yourself. Anyway, yeah, she made a promise that she would tell Amelia about her parents properly, and Let's also just note that throughout all of this, Echidna was talking a lot of trash because she hates her for some reason. I'm still thinking it has something to do with, like, them being spiritual sisters of witchhood or something like that, because they really do look similar. Like, their body type is the same, their hair length is the same, their eyes are kind of the same, minus the one is a grayish, blackish color and the other is purple. Like, they look so... Even the little hair piece that they have that came from her aunt, I'm assuming. Haven't seen that part yet, though. Anyway, during the conversation between Juice, Fortuna, and Amelia, a man comes walking down to meet them and try to have a conversation, I'm guessing? Only to be interrupted by Fortuna asking who he is, and then he goes on and on about how it's rude not to give your name first when trying to ask for somebody else's. Only for him to introduce himself as Regulus Cornelia? Whatever, Regulus. The man who assisted in taking Rem's memories and, well, name and memories, and Crush's memories from either of them, as well as disarming Crush and murdering a bunch of civilians all the way back in the beginning of the season. So maybe that means we'll be encountering them soon to see if we can get Rem's memories back. At least I would hope that's where the trial is going to free the sanctuary and blah 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 blah. Anyway, so yeah, that's where the episode ended, was him introducing himself. And by the title of the episode, I'm guessing it was so he can recruit Juice, who was at one point a normal looking good person. And as usual, I'm probably be up a while trying to catch up to this. So we remember that the last episode ended off with... I keep saying this as if it's a different episode, but I'm just combining it all in one. I really need to stop doing that in the future. Whatever. Regulus dropped in, as I said moments ago, and he wasn't alone. He was not alone. He brought Pandora. Now, several things enter my mind, the first of which being, quite literally, is she the first witch? Not having to do with sins or any of that, but, you know, the whole Pandora's box type deal. Is that who this Pandora is? Because it makes sense based on a lot of things that happened during the episode. But Fortuna ran away with Amelia after an attack on her end didn't really go so well. And after she deuced out, Juice figured the... Sorry, I had an itch. Figured the only way he could try and save them was to accept the factor of the sin of sloth into his very being. And, well, he unlocked the unseen hand and was able to throw Regulus around quite a bit. Though when he went after Pandora, that was basically stopped by Regulus, who wasn't as down and out as Juice had thought. So then it became kind of a one-on-one stalemate type deal where only the surroundings were getting destroyed, and once, you know, Regulus got bored, Juice got hurt, but that's something to pan back to later after Fortuna took Amelia away. And they had their little crying, emotional moment with each other, and Fortuna told another one of the elves to take Amelia and run away to somewhere safe. And Fortuna returned to return to Juice's side, while one of the elves was taking Amelia away and got attacked by the third great maw beast, the Black Serpent. So he told her to run and go off into the distance and not to look back. Meanwhile, Fortuna joined Juice's side, as I said, and they were going to 2v1 Pandora. And I'm assuming things did not go as planned, because regardless of the high level magic that Fortuna had and the unseen hand that Juice had, Amelia was stupid enough to be like, hey, why don't I just go get the seal and bring it to these people, and maybe they'll stop hurting my friends and family. No. When she went to go grab the seal, Pandora was already there waiting for her, and, well, based on the things that were said earlier in the episode of bring me the lock and seal and we can bring about the end of the world, that's probably how a lot of bad shit happened. You know, maybe something to do with Dragon. So it's another one of those nights where I'm probably not going to sleep for a little while because I need answers. I need answers! So, yeah, I'll see you guys in a bit. So, a little bit I think I forgot to mention before I go on about this episode was that Shima managed to tell Subaru about a bit of backstory about the real her and connection to Beatrice and Echidna. You know, she was basically best friends with Beatrice, and Echidna called herself a mother to Beatrice. And that had a whole thing going on that I imagine we'll get further exposition to soon. But yeah, that was a whole thing, and Roswell got involved at the end of that whole storytelling from what we saw anyway. So that leaves more questions to be answered. But back to the main point of things. Pandora tried to get Amelia to unlock the seal, like, for a majority of the episode. Amelia didn't know how or what key she was supposed to have, and then soon enough she eventually found out that she could literally just form it because she is the only one that could have it, and Pandora told her that she is in fact the daughter of a witch. That brought up more questions than anything, but soon Fortuna came by, got involved, and, you know, tried to kill Pandora, and it didn't really pan out because Pandora is the Witch of Vanity, which isn't that just another word of saying pride? So she just keeps blipping back in every time someone thinks they killed her. So that doesn't go over too well. Speaking of not going over too well, in the middle of a little bit of a showdown, Juice pops up from nowhere, mostly injured still, and sends his unseen hand in the direction of who he thought to be Pandora, and instead he ended up brutally slaughtering Fortuna. Ew, doesn't that always suck to accidentally kill the people you love? So that was literally his final straw to snap and start to turn into the broccoli head we all knew. Obviously, the facial transformation didn't happen until way later, but yeah, he kind of snapped and went crazy, and then there was a little emotional moment between Fortuna and Amelia, and a bit of a self-realization and change in our young heroine, to where she took that hairpin from Fortuna, applied it to herself, and killed Pandora like 12 times before eventually just freezing everything. Like the landscape, people, everything except for Pandora and Juice, who walked off with Juice laughing maniacally as we all knew him too. And that is how Amelia ended up frozen in ice until she was rescued by, I'm assuming, Roswell. So that's how all of that went down. But then we break away from all that happening and Amelia accepting who she is and her past and all the nonsense that had happened. so she can move on to the second trial. But before that, she has herself a little personal cry about her mother, because she couldn't really break face in front of Echidna who is following her throughout her entire first trial. So we shift over from that to Ram taking the Ryuzus back to a place of rest, and Subaru, Otto, and Garfield going to talk to Roswaal. Of course, it's not about anything normal. Otto ends up being a wrench thrown into Roswaal's original plans and introduces himself. And then Roswaal's just like, so why are you here anyway? And Subaru just kind of all manned up. It's like, I advise you to surrender because I'm already fucking up your plans. And that's how it ended off, with old Rossi boy just giving a look of, bitch, are you fucking kidding me? Now I'm half considering going to bed with that, because that didn't end on a cliffhanger, and I'm only a few episodes away from actually, ending off the series. So I might just go and do that, all depending on how I'm feeling in a few moments. Regardless, might be the same shirt, might be a new shirt. Guess we'll see. So in this one, we basically get the whole exposition and backstory about the whole issue pertaining to Roswaal, Echidna, Ryuzu, and Beatrice, and how the sanctuary originally came about. To which we see that there was somebody who was causing them a problem, which is why the sanctuary needed to come about. Some devil of melancholy or some, or not, that's just a new enemy archetype who's just been thrown at us, I guess. But the episode goes on with, yes, I'm skipping over all the minor cutesy shit, because honestly, who really, like, Ryuzu and Beatrice have a really good friendship, which you can take in other directions if you really want, but at the time, they're still children. Anyway, but yeah, after all the cutesy stuff, Beatrice is gonna... Wow, what the hell, air bubble in my throat. Beatrice was gonna teach Ryuzu to read and write and all that stuff, and Roswaal and Echidna made out a little bit in the beginning of the episode, but it was only to drain his mana, supposedly. If you ask the Fate series, there's many other ways to do that. Ha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Anyway. Again, I say that way too much. I've probably already said it like 30 times throughout the past, like, dozen episodes, or however many it's been. I'm trying to avoid saying it. They have their discussion about what to do about, rising the sanctuary and sealing the barrier and all that stuff. The Devil of Melancholy beats the holy hell out of Roswaal, and then Echidna eventually arrives to try and buy some extra time for Beatrice to get Ryuzu over to where she's supposed to be sealed, because Ryuzu is the only one who can be used as the core of the barrier, as it were, as we've seen. And Beatrice didn't know that that was the point of taking her there until like 5 seconds after they got there, and Ryuzu was all silent and shit about options Beatrice was giving. And then, like any good friend, she kept proposing other things they could do, helping to defend her mother, or have all of them run away, or something like that. But Ryuzu knew in the end that was not the option, so she gave her goodbye and entered the crystal to form and seal the barrier. Side note, I honestly wonder how that's going to go when the barrier's been broken and the sanctuary's been freed. Like, are they going to be able to take the original Ryuzu with them when they leave? You know, maybe they can have a happy reunion with Beatrice? That'd be interesting. But after that whole flashback, we had Subaru and Roswell continuing their talk about Subaru asking Ross to surrender, and he's just like, nah, I'm still not gonna do that. The assassins are still on the way to the mansion and the village, and you guys are still stuck here. So then they go having their little back and forth about Amelia being what she is and how she'll be shunned anyway no matter what happens, and Roswell is just an asshole. Like, that's basically the point of this whole arc. Is Roswell is a giant douchebag. And frankly, I've known that the whole time, like, even if it weren't for all the spoilers given on Twitter and stuff. Speaking of spoilers on Twitter, I can't wait to see what happens with some of them, because I'm thinking he gets what he deserves, honestly. But I'm a few episodes from catching up completely. I don't know if the series is already finished or if it's finishing the day of the night I'm recording this, because I'm recording this, you know, to break kayfabe and whatever at 1:30 in the morning of the day where the finale is supposed to be, supposedly. So I'm gonna catch up and either, you know, watch the last episode before uploading this, or upload this and then have a live review of that uploaded the same day as the live review of the other thing. There'll be 3 episodes uploading on one day, though. I do the same thing with Shiny Reactions, I guess, so does it really matter? But we'll see what I decide to do, because I also have to, you know, watch the movie for Frozen Bonds. And I guess if the episode for that second thing is up tomorrow instead of Thursday like it normally is, I would probably just have the episode uploaded on Thursday and have 2 double uploads back to back, which makes up for a long period of time where I don't have any uploads. But into the next one. So this one had a lot jam-packed in it for the, like, 3rd or 4th to last episode, whatever it is. Sorry, I thought I saw something on my wall for a minute. So, Subaru's going back to the mansion with Garf and Otto, and Garf has some fancy new equipment, but we'll get to that later, because after they leave, Amelia comes out from the tomb and has a little moment to rest with Ram, who Ram then asks a favor of her to rescue Roswell. And of course, Mr. Clownface popped up after that little request was made. So he could have his little monologue about how him and Subaru are the same, and Subaru was just being an asshole to Amelia, and if he was right, and Amelia's just like, you're half right, but he actually told me about myself, and he was right. Every word of it was correct. Well, something in the throat. And she has her monologue instance. So that ends with her turning her back to him and going back into the tomb to finish the trial of the sanctuary. Meanwhile, he decides to have a little chat with Ram about everything going on, acting like she's doing his bidding still. To which moments later she tracks him down to where Ryuzu is, well, the real Ryuzu is locked up in that crystal. and says she's going to do everything in her power to rescue him, even if she has to do it by killing him, although she would rather him be alive. So she has that little talk, and he's, being the big bad guy and announcing that you can't beat me by yourself and you know it, and she agrees with him, but she's not alone. So she holds up a crystal that Subaru had tossed to her, which we saw in the fight with Garf, that crystal actually has something inside of it. A little spirit that decided to leave Amelia on her own. Puck has entered the battle. It is now a 2v1 versus the only one that can probably match Roswell's strength, and Ram as an assistant. So that's going to be a pretty epic fight scene to see. Speaking of fight scenes, that then transitions over to the mansion where Petra's running away, and seems that Elsa showed up early because when Petra decides to, I keep saying Petra, it's Petra. Petra, not Petra. Sorry, I'm confusing myself, and that made my throat hurt. Regardless, Petra went back to try and rescue Rem from inevitable demise because she's still unconscious, and Elsa happens upon her while she's running back. And when she went for the kill to, disembowel her, Frederica showed up on the scene and told her to run again, and that she'd be punished later for not listening the first time. So she does, and then she has the idea that she's going to try and find Beatrice. So she tries door after door after door after door, only to fail, and eventually end up doing little girl things and crying for Subaru, who, as we saw in the beginning of the episode, showed up, a few minutes later than he would have liked, but hey, he showed up to put her at ease, and while doing that, he's like, I could go and try and help Frederica and probably get killed, so, I sent stronger enforcements. And, well, Garf arrived on the scene pretty much just in the nick of time to save his sister. And then they had their little comedic, emotional reunion while Elsa's probably just standing there like... But they at least thanked her for giving their time for a little reunion before the fight was about to get back underway before the episode ended. But Garf just told Frederica directly, just like, you find Rem, get out of here while I fight this bitch, because I'm stronger than you. Well, I'm paraphrasing, but he kind of is. And that's where it left off, with him and his fancy gauntlets ready to take Elsa on. So I imagine we'll probably see what's going on in the village and with the melee chick soon, because I kind of want to know what's happening with that as well. So, I'll get back with the next one momentarily. Okay, so the next episode rolls into us rejoining the fight between Garfield and Elsa, which gets pretty intense. Him trying to run her face across the wall, and then her just actually getting a shot off before they fall through the floor. But they have their own little scuffle, and down below, Subaru and Petra and Otto are ready to leave and escape. However, I'm fast forwarding a bit. Subaru tries to get Beatrice out and, argue with her that she's not supposed to die there. And honestly, why didn't he say, what I thought when I saw that her book was blank the first time, I didn't think that meant she was supposed to die. I think that was supposed to mean that Echidna had meant for her to write the rest of the book herself. Choose her own destiny and that kind of thing. Or for that one person she's been waiting on not to be, someone to kill her, but to be a friend, an ally, something like that. But yeah, Subaru's little talk with Betty didn't work out well, so that sucks. He just got pushed aside, and eventually they had to escape the mansion from whatever floor they were on, only to run into a small issue that, well, Otto and Petra hadn't left yet because they were cut off by a mob beast that couldn't be really deflected by a barrier stone or whatever the hell they called it. So Frederica joined up with them again, and they met up with Maylee and her giant hippo. And, well, Frederica gave Subaru Rem, and the four of them took off for Roswell's room while Frederica was going to fight Maylee and her giant mob beast. However, that ended up in them running into another problem, which was the same mob beast that cut Otto and Petra off the first time. And they probably don't know how to quite deal with that. However, Subaru does have his unseen hand, which might make some sort of play into things. Or Otto might be able to control the mob beast using his divine protection. Suppose we'll see in the next episode. But then that shifts over to Amelia doing the second trial, which lands her into what would be her preferred present era of her Fortuna and Juice kind of having a happy time together more often than not, even though 2 out of them are kind of not alive anymore. But she took it in stride and knew that that wasn't the president that she could have nor wanted to have at this point in her life. So she told her other kinda sorta not family brother, the blonde dude who died to the black serpent, she told him, or at least the imagination of him, that she wanted to see the current present through to where it was supposed to be going. The Rem, Subaru, all of them. And then Echidna had to talk shit once she reappeared, just like, I hate you so much. Little bit of an issue between them, I guess. Really want to see what that's all about, but I imagine we'll see that either within the next couple episodes or the next season, because depending on what happens within the next 2 to 3 episodes, there is no way in hell this series is over yet. Unless it's one of those things that's just dropped for several years. But when she's done with the second trial, she comes out and receives words of encouragement from the townspeople who are waiting there in place of Ram, who's still dealing with Roswell. Still kind of want to see the rest of that fight for what it's worth, instead of just all the emotional backstory that does a number on somebody. Like, I'm usually completely devoid of any sort of emotion or anything like that. However, the past, 10 episodes or so have definitely made me feel something in here. I will not lie about that. Damn. But that just goes to show one of the few things that can actually make me feel something, even if I'm not aware of it, is anime. Some video games, but usually anime. I won't lie. Take, for instance, that scene in Kingdom Hearts 2 where people thought Goofy was actually dead. I might have felt something in that. But that's that, which I do need... I'm not gonna get off track with explaining other things. I'm just gonna move to the next episode, which I cannot wait for. I don't know if this is the third to last or second to last episode, but here it goes. So, let's instead of going by how the episode went, I'm gonna pick based on each story that got told. So first, I'm gonna pick on Amelia's side, where she's gonna be taking on the third trial, which is it showing visions of her future, or at least the future that could happen, the worst possible outcomes. Kind of like it showed Subaru all of his presents that could have happened with every time he died. This showed the unthinkable futures for Amelia to go through, involving her killing one she loved, people hating her for this or that reason, as is, has been up until recently, and all that kind of stuff. And after all those flashes, she eventually gets dropped off in the witch's graveyard, to where normally Echidna would be waiting to have a tea party with her, but Echidna was not there. Apologies. Instead, Minerva was there, who didn't want Amelia to look at her, so she kept her turned about face the entire time as they spoke. And Amelia was honest, just like, I'm not afraid of these futures. They are not guaranteed, so I can prevent them. So they had a little discussion, and Minerva's like, you're truly nothing like your mother at all. Which left Amelia questioning things about, wait, you know my mother? It's like, maybe, but that's a topic for another time. Then after some more discussion, she decided to turn around and get a face full of Minerva boob, which is not a bad place to be in my opinion. For the Witch of Wrath, she's actually a really nice person. Just saying. But after that and another little bit of chatter, she got turned about face and said, if you're ready to finish the trial, go on ahead, forth through the door, which the door weirdly looked like the seal that she was supposed to protect as a kid. But she went through the door and found the body of Echidna lying there, though she didn't think it looked like Echidna, which I found a little weird, but maybe they'll cover that later. And she freed the sanctuary. Mission accomplished. However, when she left, she saw a bunch of dust and snowfall everywhere. So did Roswell accomplish his mission? Well, for now, let's pay attention to Subaru and gang and see what they're up to. To which, Subaru and Otto and Petra were cornered by that one mob beast, but Subaru had a brilliant idea on how to take care of it. So he let it off and was going to try and set it on fire. But him doing it by himself didn't really go over well. So luckily Petra and Otto were up above where there was a hole and just dropped the oil that was necessary on top of it. So it could, burn in flames, and still had enough energy to try and run at Subaru, but luckily our boy got out of the way in time for it to just kind of crash through the window. And assumedly fall to its death. However, now the mansion was on fire, so he kind of separated from them, handed to Otto, Rem and Petra went off, while Subaru went to go find Beatrice again, probably to try and, convince her to leave the mansion. Meanwhile, back with Elsa versus Garfield and Frederica versus Maylee. Those two fights got intertwined for a little while, eventually showing that Elsa and Maylee were actually siblings, as weird as that sounds. Oh, and a little tidbit that Elsa's a vampire, which is why her injury recovery is so damn high. Also quite strange to have learned. But that fight went from Garfield ripping the head off from that hippo mobbies to Frederica needing to save Maylee from falling debris up above. uh, Garfield and Elsa biting each other in a violent yet kind of kinky manner, to Elsa telling us about her backstory about how she was almost raped, so she had to murder somebody. To which, honestly, you can't really blame that part of her, but the fact that she turned into a psychotic bitch because of that moment, I think that's pushing things a little too far. But then again, she already was a thief and had no family, so it, I guess, makes sense for her to have gone that way. But after, you know, even given all of that, her monologuing, Maylee being saved by Frederica, she still threatened to rip Garfield's insides out, and well, that fight basically ended in her being crushed by the body of the hippo-style mob beast. Like, literally, you could, it showed the fact that she was crushed from head to knees, just, and I'm pretty sure it's probably one of those things where if her brain and heart are both gone, she can't revive anymore. At least that's how most things like that end up, is even if you can repeatedly heal yourself, if your two most vital organs are gone or crushed, there's no healing that. Unless they reveal in the next episode that, yeah, she can totally still heal herself, unless she's like disintegrated like Regulus can do. So that fight's won. Maylee is still alive, but Frederick has saved her, and she doesn't have her giant mob beast anymore, so I think that might shift the gear of things. Maybe. Guess we'll see. So, time for the third act, which is Ram and Puck against Roswaal, which... that was just a huge magic showdown that ended in a bunch of fire and ice being thrown around. You know, clashing with each other, destroying one another, and Ram confessing her love for Roswaal, even though he's the one that slaughtered the entire village of demons back when she was a kid. Which, honestly, I kind of saw even before I started watching this season. Like, I could pick up the hints and cues that they were trying to drop. But even so, she attacked him when he was finally distracted after Puck set up some trickery to make him waste a lot of his magic. And I think she, like, regrew her horn during that instance. Either that or that was just something they wanted to show us for her intensity in that moment. And she didn't do it to try and hit him. No, she did it to steal the Tome of Wisdom, which he had, led himself by the entire time by what it said, instead of believing in his own actions, because it was something that Echidna gave him, so it meant a lot to him. And she just straight up tossed it in the fire that was surrounding them. Now, I'm not sure if this was the thing she predicted to happen or not, but then he just completely blew her away in a giant fireball, and that's where they ended the episode off. Pretty brutal, huh? So is Rem dead? Is she just extremely injured? Is Amelia gonna get involved? Is the snowfall Amelia saw, or well, not the snowfall, but the huge gust of wind that I think was accompanied by a snowfall, was that because Roswaal got his way and started to, shower the village in a snowfall? Or was it just due to the magic outburst being had between the two of them? Or did Puck go psycho nutso and do everything that it could to try and take on Roswaal? There's either the last episode or the second to last episode, so I'm gonna find out, and then I'll determine on the proceedings after I do the review of that one. I'm trying to figure out how to word how this next episode... it's definitely the second to last episode, because... well, we'll get to the cliffhanger in a minute. Alright, so... first let's revisit Ram and Roswell's situation, where he's holding on to her, kind of sort of regretting what he did to her. So his first act, even in the snowstorm, is to begin trying to heal her up after a mini conversation with Puck, where Puck's just like, shit, you did start that snowstorm, didn't you? You motherfucker. Excuse me. So Puck flies off to tend to some business of his own while Roswell sits there and tries to heal up Ram. And, well, I'm going to do it like I did in the last episode and call it by story instead of throughout the entire episode. At least until the stories meet, I'll say. So, yeah, he spends some time trying to heal up Ram and, actually make sure she has her horn back and she's alive and all that stuff. But we'll break away from that for just a split second to visit Amelia, who, after discovering the townspeople are encased in a barrier of ice to avoid the snowstorm from freezing them over, because Puck swung by and helped out, she goes after Puck to see where he went, and finds a frozen tree in the middle of the forest, which I guess is supposed to be like some kind of signal between them, and then follows that to where she runs into the bunch of Ryuzus and gets pretty savage with a comment about their mother. Jokes aside, though, she tries to talk them out of destroying or blipping away the magic crystal that held the OG Ryuzu. But that was to no avail, so one of them had to disappear with the crystal, and all of the rest of them followed Amelia to try and... Oh, and Amelia got back a stone with Puck inside of it, so looks like they'll be reunited. Maybe. So the Ryuzus and Amelia went to find Ram and Roswell, to which she tried to convince him to follow them, and he can heal Ram later, and he just pulls this whole pity poor me bullshit. To which I'm surprised she didn't sock him or something, because, being a mentor to her or not, he definitely deserved it for several things that happened. I'm sorry. So he refuses to budge on his own, and then the mob east rabbit things start to come out of the woodwork, literally. So she fends them off and basically forces Roswell to come with her by apparently becoming the Silver Surfer, kind of like how she arrived on the scene the first time, because she shoots ice in front of her and then slides along, or like Frozone, that Disney hero. But I think Silver Surfer might be a little bit more accurate, because, like, not because he uses ice powers, but pretty sure that superhero might have been into dudes. Then again, not a superhero I'm familiar with, so I'm just ripping off the Family Guy joke. Anyway, back to the more serious part. So the Ryuzus picked Roswell and Ram up and slid off with Amelia. So we're going to break away from that for just a second to revisit Subaru and his whole plan now that the battle with Elsa is over with. Because we see the scene of Frederica nude and Garfield just chilling. Like, does Garfield just wear clothes that fit him when he transforms, or does he just, like, not wear pants because he's all furry down there? I'm still questioning that, because both times he transformed, he didn't have to undress or come back without clothes on. Well, other than a shirt, but he only wears, like, a vest anyway half the time. That's seriously a quandary I'm curious about, so if anyone, like, has an idea, comment, because... But yeah, Amelie's, like, tied up and or unconscious, And the more important part is Subaru trying to get Beatrice out because he's a stubborn bastard, and so is she. Because he comes in and, at first he's like, I'm not that person, but we really need to get out of here or you might actually die. And then she does her whole wah, if you're not going to be that person, then leave me to die, and forces him out. And regardless of it being in the middle of a burning building, when she forced him out this time, however, it seemed like the fabric of space and time was ripping before them, which was kind of a cool effect, honestly. But of course, the madman has to go back into the burning building even after being shoved outside because I think she was trying to save his life. So he goes through every door in the mansion that was still, closed and not burnt up, to which there was only one door left, the basement. So he goes all the way down there and tries to uncover her, which he does successfully, and it's on fire, and the fabric of space and time is ripping apart, probably because the library is tied to Roswell's mansion. So the mansion is getting destroyed, therefore so is the library. And then he goes through his whole usual Subaru-like speech, and every time she tries to argue with him, he argues back twice as hard and just puts his everything out there. Kind of like he did for Amelia that one time. He said everything he needed to in just the right way that eventually made her want to help him. Like, save him from the burning building, save him from the bad future, and probably deep down inside save herself from being alone for another 100 or 2 years. Since, the girl spent 400 years virtually alone after Echidna and Ryuzu did the barrier thing, so I feel for her. I do. I do. So, moments after he eventually breaks through to her, everyone's worried about his well-being, and Petra's the first to notice that pink light shoots out from the mansion, being Beatrice and Subaru, of course, to where they take a little fast travel time to end up back in the sanctuary, right beside Amelia, who's trying to fend off the Great Rabbit, like 1,000 of them. And our boy Subaru seems to have a plan for what he's going to do. Now, I don't know if that'll involve Beatrice and Amelia combining their powers, or if Beatrice is strong enough to just, kill them all off and just like that. Because, Daphne even said they all need to be killed at once. So, I believe Amelia could have done it if she just used her ice powers to just, But I suppose that's what the next episode is going to be about. Now the last question is, do I attach my review of the season finale? At least I would hope it'd be a season finale, because Rem is still unconscious, and the witch's disciples are still running amok, and we still don't know what happened with Pandora. There are just so many questions still unanswered, and I am all fucking for it. Ugh. Excuse me. But as far as if I'm combining the season finale with the rest of this or not, I think I might. Just because technically I still am getting the review of the last episode up on the same day as it was released. So it'd be much wiser to just combine it with the rest of these and then let you guys hear every single episode worth of opinion that I had. To which I'm I will mark in this that I'm probably not going to do the by episode thing for everything. Like, if there are more than 30 episodes for a series, I'll probably go back to typing it up. But as far as things that are like 20-ish a season, that's not so bad. So, I'll see you guys for the season finale at some point throughout the day. Because I am recording this Wednesday morning, technically. So, even if I have another thing to review live same day, or, well, if we're talking another thing, it'd be a post review, but either way, this will probably be uploaded in the same day, unless that other review is going to be uploaded on Thursday. And then I will get the review of the OVA up for you on Friday, let's say, just to give it a couple days. So, see you in the next one and the season finale. Oh, okay, just trying to gather myself and my thoughts after watching the season finale, and literally the last half of the season has been too emotional. Like, from happy sad to sad sad, it's just been way too emotional. But everything climaxed at the finale in a mostly good note. So, we'll go from the top, with Subaru and Beatrice arriving on the scene to face off with the Great Rabbit. They arrived on the scene, and Subaru actually can use magic. Like, not just Shamrock, not just the unseen hand, but Beatrice taught him how to use actual magic in a spur of the moment type deal. Because first she used her magic to try and kill off a bunch of the rabbits, and then she encouraged him to try and mimic her, to which he did successfully. So they killed a good percentage of the rabbits, but it wasn't enough, so eventually they concocted a plan. They were going to wait for as many of the rabbits as possible to arrive, for them to have maxed out at their multiplication number before surrounding them in a barrier of magic crystals. And once they did that, then Amelia froze that barrier, and Beatrice used, at least I'm assuming it was Beatrice who lifted it off the ground, unless that was also Amelia, in which case that's pretty cool. Lifted that piece of land off the ground, and slowly, after using Shamak, the rabbits started to not only eat each other, but get teleported to somewhere, in some unknown space. And that unknown space is where they would lie for eternity until they all killed each other. And even if there was one left, it wouldn't be able to go anywhere, assumedly. So that was a happy ending. The Grey Rabbit was gone, the villagers are all at peace and cheered on for Subaru and company, and then moments later we saw Roswell getting the shit kicked out of him for everything he had done, which was completely deserved. But afterward, he promised he wouldn't do anything ever again to try and harm them, including making an actual magic oath on his body, to where if he did try to hurt them again, he would just burn up in ash, soul and all, so he couldn't revive himself. And then Amelia forced an actual "I'm sorry" out of him, instead of just promises that he could break. So far on the big board, there's Subaru and Beatrice being as close as like brother and sister, and Amelia, accepting Subaru's feelings for her. Although apparently either somebody in her past or Puck was an asshole and pulled the whole, anime cliche, if you kiss a boy, you're pregnant, because someone has to dick with her, right? But I'm assuming he, cleared that up right quick, at least off screen. And maybe a little bit later he'll make sure it actually happens. Bow chicka bow wow. But yeah, after that touching little moment, we show them in another mansion of some branch of the Roswell family. Or Mathers family, I guess is the actual name of the family. And it's a nice little ceremony where Amelia officially knights Subaru to, well, yeah, be her loyal knight. And of course he's going to be all for it and make whatever promises he needs to. It's a nice little official setting. Rem's still in her unconscious state, unfortunately. So I'm just going to drop now that probably guarantees us a season 3 so they can encounter more of the witch's disciples and get Rem her memory back. Which, speaking of the witch's disciples, I'm pretty sure Meili was at that party and kind of might have joined the good guys? I'm not sure on either of those things, but guess we'll find that out next season. It was a happy, good time. Beatrice and Petra, got along well, and Roswell hung out, and Garfield tried to drink when Otto passed out, because I guess Otto's a lightweight, which we've seen a couple times before. Then Amelia and Subaru had a nice little talk about something they'd have to adjourn to later on in her bedroom. Because, talking is totally all they do after such a glorious night of successes. And then they just danced the night away, having a more happy ending than season 1 did. Now, that's going over the entirety of what happened during this season, with the little side note of Roswell still intends on trying to bring back Echidna into a living, breathing body, which, honestly, none of the witches seem like that bad of people, even though people give them shit. Like, even Satella, who killed all of them, seems like she had more she wanted to give to people than she was putting out. So my final review for the season, there was a lot more to go, a lot more going on than in season 1. We got to see a lot of the characters' backstories and a lot of reason that they are who they are today, including, what happened to Juice and Amelia's side of the family, which I'm still going to watch the OVA movie and do a separate review of that. Otto's backstory, Beatrice's backstory, some of the new characters' backstories, Subaru's personal life a little bit before he got to where he was. There was just a lot in this season. He didn't die as many times and have to reset, thankfully. And he even learned not to abuse Return by Death anymore, as well as a couple of new abilities that he himself unlocked, including the ability to use more magic than just Shamak and the Unseen Hand, and of course, like I said, the latter half of the season was very emotional. Like, I am not an emotional person, but I will be completely open and honest, and there were a lot of parts that, as I am right now, I teared up. Even actually shed tears, not just them welling up. Because the good, the bad, it was just so much to take in, and I loved every minute of it. I did. I truly loved every minute of it. I don't know what I'm going to try to catch up to next, because one of the shows I'm currently watching finishes soon. I honestly might go to catch up to something else and then finish that afterward. But that's on another topic. As far as season 2 of ReZero goes, it was wonderful. And the fact it still leaves open the gap for season 3 to be inevitable unless something happens. I'm looking forward to it. I'm like, when season 3 drops, I'm going to be on it on a weekly basis to make my review, as I am with a couple of other shows currently, and will hopefully continue to be with new shows coming out. But that has been my review of ReZero Season 2. If you liked Season 1, this will touch your heart even more than that touched the brain. It has been the Blazer King with King's Critiques, signing out. Ta-ta for now.